I was talking to you about living in Uttarkashi. Babaji had gone off. He was supposed to come back in 6 months. I was learning Sanskrit, visiting ashrams, meditating on the banks of the Ganga, and every day, twice, morning and evening, going to the Kashi Vishwanath temple, sitting down quietly, and then going back to my kutir. Now, this continued for some time. There was another sannyasi. I think his name was Lakshman Giri, probably Giri. I forget the last part. Lakshman. This sadhu was a tall, thin sadhu who has been living in Uttarkashi for a number of years. So one day he came and told me that there is a great holy man living in Uttarkashi, whom it would be wonderful to go and meet and have darshan. So I inquired about him, and he said that he belonged to the Dandi Swamis. As I mentioned earlier, the Dandi Swamis belong to the Shankara Math and to the branches of the Shankara Math, and they are usually Brahmin sannyasins, and they carry a dandi. It's called Dandi Swamis. So one of this person was a Dandi Swami, and he was very learned in Vedanta and also in meditation. It was at this time that he was asked to succeed and become the Shankaracharya of a math. Now, apart from the 4 maths, which is Sringeri, Dwarka, Puri and Jyotirmatha near Kedarnath, Joshimath, these are the 4 Shankara maths. Although there is also a matha at Kanchi, which is called the Kanchi Kamakoti Pitha. This is also a Shankara math. But the Sringeri Matha, which is the southernmost matha, which is in Karnataka, does not accept the existence of any other matha in the south apart from Sringeri Matha. So this is a additional matha which is there. Although there have been great saints who have been part of this matha, like the senior Swami of Kanchipuram, whom I have met. I shall describe my meeting with him later on. Anyway, so these 4 mathas, Sringeri, Dwarka, Puri and Joshimath, which is Jyotirmatha. Apart from that, there are any number of auxiliary mathas, which are small mathas, which are branches of one of these. So this great man, whom Lakshman Giri spoke to me about, was a Dandi Swami who was supposed to succeed and become the Acharya, the head of a small branch matha of Sringeri. Now, he suddenly realized that if he took on and became a Mathatipati, head of a matha, so many things involved, formalities involved. So instead of that, he declined. He said, please take somebody else who is next in seniority. I am not interested in becoming a Mathatipati, and walked out of the matha, came to Uttarkashi. After coming to Uttarkashi, he threw his dandi into the river and became a free Swami, no more a Dandi Swami. And he had not even a kamandalu or a begging bowl. He used to live by whatever food was given to him when he stretched forth his hands. For the time being, he would eat, and what is left he would leave for the birds, drink water from the Ganga, and live quietly in a small kutir. And he would never talk much. He tried most of the time to be in mauna. So when I got it, not Lakshman Giri, is Lakshman Puri. So when Swami Lakshman Puri told me that it's a good thing to go and see him, I said, will he see me? He said, yeah, he'll see you, why not? So he took me one day, and he was in his kutir near the Ganga. So I went and prostrated myself, and he smiled. He was a big built man, tall, very fair, with a balding head but grey hair. When I looked at him, I thought he must be around more than 80 years old. You know how it is at the age of 75, 80, 85. Old people are to be looked after so much, even in our own homes. It's such a difficult thing to look after old people. But here was a man living by eating food with both his hands, drinking water from the Ganga, having refused to become the head of a mutt, having thrown his dandi into the water because he didn't want to be identified with any sect. He wore a saffron Gerwa dhoti and a Gerwa half sleeve shirt, and a blanket was his only possession. I was very touched and impressed by seeing him. I sat in his presence hoping that I could talk. Suddenly he decided to talk, because Lakshman Puri said normally he is silent, he is in Mauna. He decided to talk. So he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I am a brahmachari and I am searching for the truth." When I said, "I am searching for the truth," he smiled and he said, "You have taken up a very difficult task. It is not such an easy thing to do. All my years I have given up my dandi, I have given up my kamandalu, but I am still searching." I was quite touched by it, because many people do go to Uttarkashi for a holiday and stay for 6 months and come back and say they have become God realized. They know everything. Here was a man who had spent all his life, who had given up everything, and who was saying that to search for the truth is not such an easy thing. I haven't found yet, I am still searching. And believe me, not an ordinary man, a man who had studied the Shastras completely, I would say, Upanishads, Vedas. I think he had a very good knowledge of everything. Lakshman Puri used to tell me that he has had various discussions with him on Vedanta, very deep discussions. Then he asked me, "Do you have a guru?" So I thought for a while with my eyes closed, and he said, "No, no, no, I am not going to become your guru, don't worry, because I don't want to have a disciple." He said, "How can I have a disciple when I haven't found it yet?" And I said, "Yeah, I have a guru. Babaji is my guru." He said, "Babaji, there are many Babajis. Which Babaji?" I said, "My Babaji is a direct disciple of Sri Guru Babaji." He said, "I've heard of Sri Guru Babaji." "Yes," he said. "Wonderful. So you are lucky." I said, "Good. So do you think I can meet him if he is around?" I said, "He is gone off. He'll come back after 6 months." And then there were only 5 more months left. "He'll come back after 5 months. I will ask him if you would like to see him." He said, "I would very much like to see him." Then we sat and meditated together for a while, and I saw that his mind was quite silent and settled. And then after a while I quietly got up and prostrated and came away. So another interesting thing was, after some time I got a little fed up of staying in that kutir, because many people came to know that I was staying in the kutir, especially some of the brahmacharis and sadhus who are from Kerala came to know that I was staying here and that I was from Kerala originally. So a small network was being created. People used to come and sit down and talk and discuss matters, and slowly from Vedanta it would go to politics, and this whole thing was going on. So I decided that I will leave this kutir and go and stay in some place where people generally cannot gather and discuss and talk too much. I was looking for a place. Now one of the brahmacharis, who happened to be kind of sent for tapasya from the Ramakrishna mission in Kerala, from Trichur. What happens is, in ashramas like the Ramakrishna mission, a brahmachari or a sannyasi, sadhu, is not supposed to have things like a bank account and a passbook and so on. They are not supposed to have any individual lives. apart from the fact that they should control themselves, learn how to eat limited food, discipline their minds. Now, if it is found that some of the brahmacharis or swamis have committed something which is against the rules, for which they need to be disciplined, then usually they are sent to faraway places, but places of pilgrimage where there is no Ramakrishna mission, there is no mutt. Because if they go to a Ramakrishna mission center, again they'll get food, they'll have everything, all the luxuries that are needed for a sadhu will be there. So they are sent away to places like Uttarkashi. Uttarkashi is one of the favorite places where they are supposed to live for 6 months or 1 year and do tapasya, which means they have to go to Annakshetra, beg for food. In the Ramakrishna mission, nobody needs to beg for food, it is available in the dining hall. So this is considered to be discipline, and then they have to meditate, study, do japa. So one of these brahmacharis, whom I had already known some years back, he told me that there is one house available which is on the outskirts of Uttarkashi on the way to Gangotri. Then I said, why is it lying vacant? Why is nobody there? He said, the problem is, first of all, there is no electricity there. And secondly, some brahmachari used to live there from Andhra Pradesh. And he had built a cave to meditate. And as soon as you enter the room, there are steps going down, and underneath there is an underground kind of a chamber which he had built for some yogic practice or tapasya, kayakalpa, something like that. So I said, then that is ideal. So I can go inside. He said, that is why nobody is going there now, because this brahmachari, this yogi who used to meditate in the cave, got very troubled and frustrated and agitated due to various reasons, and he decided to commit suicide. So he went in, put kerosene on his body and set himself on fire and died. So after it was cleared and everything, nobody stays there because of the fear that the ghost might come. So when he told me this, I said that is an ideal place to go and stay because nobody will bother you. There was a little bit of fear and apprehension which slowly vanished, because Babaji had always told me, the Aghori sadhus, they live near smashans, cremation grounds and such terrible places, so that nobody will go and bother them. Everybody is afraid of going to the burning grounds. Only jackals and dogs are around in the night, or maybe people who are tomb thieves or drunks. Nobody else goes there. So I said this is the ideal place because I would be completely undisturbed. First 2 nights I found it difficult to meditate inside. Not because I saw anybody, but there was a fear in the mind. But slowly I learned to adjust, and very soon I was free of it. Only one night I remember that when I was meditating around midnight, I thought I heard somebody crying as if they are very sad. The sound of crying came, and I thought I saw somebody with a white cloth on their head walking up the stairs. That is the only one and only time I had any such experience, but I dismissed it from the mind. And Babaji had taught me what to chant when you are afraid. So I chanted that mantra, thought of Babaji, and continued to stay there. After 6 months, which means around April time, Babaji came back. So instead of going to the kutir, he came straight there. And he said, so now you are staying in a haunted house. I said, yes, Babaji, like to stay here. He said, okay. There were 2-3 rooms there. He said, I'll also stay with you here. So he also stayed. So I explained to, he knew, but I told him one night I heard a voice and I saw something. He said, dismiss it from your mind. This should not affect yogis. Now, after a couple of days, then he checked my Sanskrit, how far I had gone, what I am learning, And I told him how Sharmaji said that you send all kinds of people to him. So he laughed. He said, yeah, he's like, he was a good man. Okay, fine. Then I told him about the existence of this Dandi Swami, ex-Dandi Swami, who was living in Uttarkashi, and he said he requested that if you come back, it will be possible for you to go and see him. He said, yes, I will go and see him. I already had thought of seeing him, so we will go. I accompanied him. I went there. As soon as we reached there, now that day, this Swami was sitting on a flat rock near the river when we went. So as soon as he saw me and Babaji coming, he understood that this must be my Guru, Babaji. So he got up, and even though he was a very old man, Babaji looked always like a 35-year-old man. Anyway, he got up and tried to do pranams, and Babaji did not allow him to do pranams. He held his hands and said, don't do it first. You are a sannyasin who is wearing an ochre robe, and the institution of sannyas is one of the most respected institutions in this country. So I cannot allow you to do pranams to me. I am wearing white, Babaji said. I am not wearing gerua. Second thing is, you are much older than me and you are very knowledgeable, so you cannot do pranams. So he did namaskar and sat down. And then Babaji told me, you do pranams. So I did pranams to him. Then he said to Babaji, I would like to discuss certain matters with you. Is it okay with you? Babaji said, it's okay. Babaji said, do you want him to go? Is it personal? He said, no, let him stay because he will learn a lot in our discussion. So I stayed. Then they had a long discussion, and he told him how he had studied, what he had studied, how much he had studied, and because of which, and still he has not touched that which he should have touched, which is the truth. Babaji told him, see, the problem is only one thing now. You have gathered so much knowledge. You are a good man, but you have gathered so much knowledge in your head that the spark of the truth which lies in everyone hidden is now completely covered by the knowledge that you have studied. Now this was a completely new concept. I have never even thought of this concept. He said, you are now conditioned by the knowledge that you have acquired. You have given up your dandi, you have given up your kamandalu, you have given up your position as the head of the mutt, but you still have somewhere in your mind the feeling that you are better than others because you have knowledge. He said, now that is your last barrier. If you can get rid of that, then you are free. Then he explained. He said, he asked him, have you read the Ishavasya Upanishad? So the Swamiji said, yes, I have read the Ishavasya. Do you remember a particular sloka from the Ishavasya Upanishad which says that one who worships ignorance, avidya, enters into darkness, which is quite all right. We all agree that one who worships darkness or ignorance enters into darkness. But the next line immediately after that in the Ishavasya Upanishad is, and he who worships knowledge enters into greater darkness. And Babaji explained to him that some people explain it by saying that it refers to paravidya and aparavidya, which means that ignorance is, when they talk of knowledge, he who worships knowledge enters into greater darkness, they are talking about aparavidya, or knowledge of ordinary things. And Babaji said, if that was the case, the rishis never said things which are not certain. They would have definitely said paravidya and aparavidya. Nothing like that has been mentioned in the Upanishad. He said, that is because if you have not got the explanation till now. So the Swamiji said, actually this used to trouble me all the time. I haven't found an explanation. He said, okay, let me explain, listen carefully. And he looked at me to see if I was listening carefully. He said, how does one acquire knowledge? Swamiji said, by studying something. He said, when you study something, what does it mean? What are you studying? He said, because I don't know about it. Okay. So when you don't know about something, you try to know about it, you try to understand it. Fine. Now when you have understood it, what happens? When I have understood it, it is stored in my memory, right? So when you have understood something, it is stored in your memory, and then you say this is knowledge. Yes, which means anything that we say we have knowledge about is something that has been understood and stored in the memory, which can be at any given moment extracted, which means it's stored in the memory, but at any time you can recover it and put it back again. This is what is called knowledge, any knowledge, spiritual, mental, moral, ordinary. Yes, said, but the truth that you are seeking, the truth that we seek, is not a thing of the past, because all memory is something to do with the past. Otherwise it's not called a memory. You can't have a memory of the present. The moment you have it becomes a memory, it has already gone to the past. It cannot be in the present. Now the truth that you are seeking, which Vedanta talks about, is to be found in the present, here and now. It cannot be found in memory, because memory is always a thing of the past. And all the knowledge that you have is a thing of the past, because it is a memory. So when that ceases and the mind becomes free of it, then you will realize that the truth is right now here, moving every second without staying anywhere. Like the river that moves, because it moves, it does not gather any muck. The moment it stops moving, it becomes like a dead pond which develops fungus and various other things in it and becomes stale. So it's this movement of the mind without clinging to anything, including knowledge, is the only way to find out what the truth is, because the truth is always in the present and not in the past, and therefore is not in any knowledge that you have acquired. The Swami closed his eyes for a minute and said, I think now I have understood what you are trying to say. I think I have understood. Babaji said, that's fine. I think you shall be free very soon. And he got up and blessed him, and we walked out. Then we were scheduled to go to Gomukh, to Gangotri and Gomukh from Uttarkashi. Now, I have to, before that I want to tell you a small story, just like similar to the story of the Swami, Dandi Swami and Babaji. If you remember, I think most of you know, most of us know about the existence of a great person called Ramana Maharshi, who used to live in Tiruvannamalai. Tiruvannamalai is not very far from here. Now, I won't go into the life of Ramana Maharshi, but I am going to just give you a small instance of what happened to a great seeker whose name was Ganapati Muni, who was a scholar in the Upanishads, in the Vedas. He had studied everything that one would require to move into the spiritual life. Ganapati Muni was also an expert on the Sri Vidya. Now when we come to that, in Gomukh, as we travel, I will talk to you about that. But he was an expert in the Sri Vidya Upasana and all the scriptures that are to be studied by the sadhak who moves towards the spiritual path. And after having studied all that, Karma Kanda, the Jnana Kanda, and all these, the Upanishads, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, he felt that still he has not reached the truth, had not reached the Satya which he was seeking. There was an invisible but strong barrier that prevented him from breaking through. So he was searching for someone. He went to many places. Then he went to Tiruvannamalai. And there somebody told him that there is a Swami, unknown yogi, sitting in the Skandashrama cave. In those days, Ramana Maharshi was not known. He was unknown. Actually, till Paul Brunton wrote his book, Search in Secret India, hardly anybody knew about Ramana Maharshi. So he was living in the cave called Skandashrama cave. So why don't you go there? So Ganapati Shastrigal went to see him, and Maharshi was sitting as usual with folded legs, looking straight. Ramana Maharshi hardly closed his eyes when he meditated. It was always open, but no movement. He was sitting there quietly and peacefully. So Kavyakanta Ganapati Shastrigal, that's how he used to be called, he went and stood in front of him, then sat down. No movement, no sign of recognition. After quite some time, his eyes started moving and he looked at him. Both of them looked at each other. Then he asked. Ramana Maharshi hardly spoke. He spoke very few words. So he did like this. What is the matter? Why have you come? So Ganapati Muni went on into a long discussion on what he had come for. He said, I am so and so. I have studied the Vedas, I have done this, I have done that, Gita, I have studied all the commentaries of Gaudapada, I have done the Sri Vidya Upasana, I have been initiated in Shodashakshari Mantra, I am a Sri Chakra Upasaka, whole thing. But still, there is a barrier. How to get rid of? இப்போ என்ன செய்யணும்? He asked. இதெல்லாம் செய்தாச்சு என்ன செய்யறது? So Maharshi supposed to have smiled and told him, கொஞ்ச நேரம் சும்மா இருக்க முடியுமா? Can you keep quiet for a while? You have done so many things, you have been talking about it. Can you just keep quiet? That's all that is required, because you are so caught up. Just can you shut up and sit for a while? So Ganapati Muni, when he heard that, you see, when there is a proper receptor, disciple, and a proper teacher, and when both are in rapport with each other, then when truth is said, it immediately takes effect. Like a flash, Kavyakanta Ganapati Shastrigal realized what he was seeking. His barriers broke and he became absolutely free. And then he came back and told people that there is a great jnani sitting up there in Skandashrama about whom you have no idea. Why don't you go and take his blessings? That's from that time Ramana Maharshi slowly came to be known in the world. And then Paul Brunton came and stayed with him for some time and said that he just sat and understood everything without a word coming from Maharshi. So that is when he wrote the book called A Search in Secret India with Ramana Maharshi. I lived for 3.5 years with Babaji. And during those 3.5 years, I had passed through so many experiences which I think it would have been impossible for me if Babaji's presence was not there on this earth to guide me. There are a couple of things I have to say during that period. One is our visit to Gomukh. One day we set out from Uttarkashi to Gangotri. We stayed in Gangotri for a while in a kutir belonging to a Naga sadhu. After 2 days we started the climb to Gomukh via Chirbasa and Bojbasa. The first day we stopped at Bojbasa, and there was a tantric yogi from Bengal who had set up his ashram. For travelers, there is no place there where they can stay or where they can eat in Bojbasa before that. His name was Lal Baba, and the ashram he set up was known as Lal Baba's ashram. It was all painted red, because red color is very important for these tantra sadhus who practice tantra. So we spent some time that night there, and the next morning we went off to Gomukh. Now Gomukh, you must understand, is so high up. It's, I think, nearly 18,000 feet or so above sea level. And there in those days there was no accommodation available. Nowadays you might be able to find some accommodation in Gomukh, because the ITBP, the Border Security Police, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, has a few places where you can stay. So from there we just walked up to Gomukh, had a nice dip in the cold waters of Gomukh, which only in the first dip it is freezing, afterwards you will become all right. The secret is to keep a towel near you, take one dip, take a few quick dips, and then come out and rub yourself dry before you freeze. So we had a dip in the river, and then we decided to walk to Tapovan. Now, Tapovan is a big glacier that still goes higher than Gomukh. So we walked on. It took us about a day, almost a day, that we reached a place which is the highest point. You can see the Satopant from there. The Bhagirathi peak is visible quite before that. And then if you look on the other side, you see the beautiful Gangotri glacier, which stretches for miles and miles with no tree, nothing in sight except a vast sheet of ice. Now that itself, at your first look, if you look at the Gangotri glacier, suddenly something happens to your mind. It also becomes like a vast sheet of ice spread all over. And it is under this that the Ganga flows out through the Gomukh. But you have to be very careful when you walk on the glacier, because some places the Tapovan glacier has holes which has a very thin covering, so you shouldn't break the ice and go inside. Very often travelers find skeletons there of people who have gone and not come back, because there is no place to stay there up. And at the highest point of Tapovan, from Tapovan, you can actually have a glimpse of Kailash on the other side, the great Kailash mountain. So anyway, so from there, after spending some time in Tapovan, we came back, because you can't halt there. There's no place. You'll freeze to death. I don't know about Babaji, but I would. So we came back. Now, in between Gomukh and Tapovan glacier, the top of Tapovan, there are a few caves, generally not occupied by anybody, but sometimes there are people who come and stay there in summer. So when we came back, we went to one of these caves where one of Babaji's old associates, whom he simply called as Dadaji, and he was from Bengal, he was staying in one of these caves. So we spent the night, we decided to spend the night. Dadaji said, why don't you stay for 2-3 days? This young man is very tired, Babaji. You cannot make him go up and down like this. So Babaji said, okay, fine, you stay here. So he made food for us. Whenever he came and stayed there, he came with sack loads of provision. So after a long time, I ate some rice and potato curry there. It's very difficult to cook dal in those heights because the air pressure is very low, but potatoes you can cook. Anyway, so, and one evening, Babaji told this man whom used to call Dadaji, Dada, why don't you initiate him into the Sri Vidya? So he said, but why should I initiate him into Sri Vidya? You are more advanced than me, you are senior to me, you should initiate him. No, 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 he said, I want you to initiate him into the Sri Vidya. So he agreed. So we lit a fire, sat down, and I got initiated into what is known as the Bala Mantra. Then it's called the Bala Tripura Sundari Mantra. Then the Panchadashakshari Mantra, which is a 15-lettered Sri Vidya Mantra. And the Shodashakshari, which is the 16-letter Sri Vidya Mantra. Now when I say this, you will wonder what is this mysterious Sri Vidya Mantras. I have to explain this. Sri Vidya is called the Tantra Gayatri, just as the Vedic Gayatri is the mantra Om Bhurvhuva Swaha and so on. The Sri Vidya is what is called the Tantra Gayatri. Now, in the practice of Sri Vidya, why is Sri Vidya practiced? What is the advantage of Sri Vidya? Why do people do it? Now, for this we have to go into the understanding of what Tantra means. People have all kinds of wrong notions about Tantra. They think that Tantra has something to do with dead bodies or something in cremation grounds and so on. Some people do practice it there, but it actually has nothing to do with these matters. The problem is, Tantra is divided into two parts. One is called the Samaya Marga and the other is called the Vamachara. Vamachara, the left-handed path, and the right-handed path, which is called Samaya Marga. Now, the Vamachara is usually for people of a certain category who cannot rise above their needs unless and until they are exposed to it for some period of time. But the idea is finally to rise above and not get stuck there. Now, Vamachara therefore advises people to use the Panchamakaras, which includes liquor, meat and so on, so that one, after experiencing it, gets rid of the craving for it. That is the intention. But usually what happens is one gets stuck to it. There is it's very difficult to come out of it, mainly because of the lack of a proper teacher who can guide one to get out of it. And it is Vamachara which is usually associated with sitting in cremation grounds and all these kind of things. Basically it is meant to get the fear out of our minds. It has nothing to do with a ritual of any dead spirits or anything of that kind, which is all nonsense. Now, Samaya Marga, also in Vamachara, the Devi or Shakti, Parashakti means supreme energy. Now, you know that the whole world is pervaded by energy. There is nothing that does not work without energy. So, the essence of energy or the root of all energy is called Parashakti. So, it is usually depicted as feminine in gender, because a mother who keeps the child in the womb is always a woman. So, the female aspect of the supreme reality worshipped as the mother goddess is what is meant by Sri Vidya. She is also called Rajarajeshwari, Tripura Sundari and so on. Now, this energy, which is the counterpart of Shiva, so it is Shiva and Shakti. Now, in Tantra, a great deal of importance is given to Shakti, even more than that which is given to Shiva, because the understanding is when everything is quiet, when everything is tranquil, then it is Shivam. When there is activity and movement, then Shakti presents herself, manifests herself. Now, the whole world is pervaded by Shakti. Einstein has proved it in physics, that everything is energy. That energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. Now, this energy which changes in one form into another is what is known as Parashakti. Of course, it is worshipped in the different forms, but this is Parashakti. Now, as far as the human individual is concerned, this energy dwells in every living being after having done the work of creating this body in the womb. At the bottom of the spine, in a triangular shape, like a coiled up snake. This energy, which is Parashakti as the individual manifestation in every human being, is known as the Kundalini. So, Kula Kundalini means actually the Shakti who remains unmanifest, hidden in the bottom of the spine of every living being. Now, Samaya Marga, Tantra as practiced in Samaya Marga, is not much to do with the external worship of Shakti in the yantras, which is called the Shri Yantra and so on, which are symbolic manifestations of the inner mechanisms, but it is to do with touching the inner Shakti, which is the Kundalini, and through various practices including devotion, allowing it or letting it or making it ascend from the bottom of the spine, chakra by chakra or center by center, to the top of the head, which is the Sahasrara chakra or the 1000-petaled lotus, where the presence of Shivam is acknowledged, and when the Shakti reaches there, Shiva and Shakti become one. This is the concept of Ardhanarishwara, which is where half is man and half is woman. This movement, it's not physical, it's to do with the mind. Now, Samaya Marga deals with this process of purifying the nadis, Shushumna Nadi, the central channel. Now, that nadi is also called Kula. So, therefore, the practitioners are also called Kaulas, those who walk on this Kula, through which Kula Kundalini moves. And this practice is what is known as the Sri Vidya. Now, the mantra taught in this only consists of Bijaksharas. There are no words, there are only sounds. Bijakshara is a concept in which the ancient scientists, spiritual scientists who are known as the rishis, have discovered that each sound has a certain effect on the outside world as well as in the inner psyche, and they have selected some sounds which are called Bijaksharas. For example, Hreem, Ha, Ra, Im, Hreem. This is a sound. It has no meaning. It represents Shakti, but actually it has no word meaning in the dictionary. Now, Om. Now, Om is called Pranava because it is the root sound for all the mantras. Om actually does not mean anything. It means it's mostly a sound. Although symbolically it represents creation, preservation, destruction, and so on. Actually, the more importance is to be given to the sound of Om than to the meaning of Om. It's called Pranava because it is the beginning of the movement of prana. Now, these Bijaksharas like Hreem, etc., are put together in a certain order and chanted in the mind, starting from the lowest center, which is called the Mooladhara, and which is represented by a triangle with its apex down, and chanted at each center. There are 6 centers starting from Mooladhara and reaching the 7th center, which is the Sahasrara. Now, each of these centers, a particular sound or Bijakshara mantra is used to clear and purify those centers, and Shakti is led up in her wild dance from the Mooladhara up the other chakras till she reaches the Sahasrara chakra, and the union between Shiva and Shakti takes place there, and the whole mind, body and soul of the practitioner, Upasaka, is in complete bliss, which when one has experienced, there is no craving for any of the smaller little sensations that we normally crave for as human beings. This is the whole thing which is known as Sri Vidya Upasana. So, this is the thing that was taught to me by Dada, this Bengali person, and I learnt the mantra from him, and I continued to chant it till a certain point. Even now I do it sometimes in meditation, because it is a very, very potent way of keeping the energies in circulation up and down one's consciousness or one's Sushumna Nadi. Now, so having stayed there for some time, we came back again to the plains and went back to Rishikesh. Before stopping, I have to mention something else. Around 3 times I have been to Gomukh in those days. Afterwards I went again, that is a different thing, but those days. And out of that, 2 with Babaji and once alone. Babaji said, go alone. And once on the way to Gomukh, while I was traveling to Gomukh, I met a foreigner who was living there in one of the caves and practicing Kriya Yoga. I am not supposed to mention his name. Babaji used to call him the German. He was from Germany, from Stuttgart, a scientist from Stuttgart who was experimenting on, who was a neurologist from Stuttgart, who was experimenting on sound and the effect it has on the human brain. So Babaji had told me that when you go to Gomukh this time alone, meet the German and stay 2 days with him in the kutir. So I agreed. So I went and met him. So I asked him, how do you know Babaji? How did you know Babaji? He said he had come to the Himalayas many times because he was very much interested in this experiments, research on the connection between the brain and neurology and the experiences that yogis are supposed to get in deep meditation. He had done a great deal of study on the pineal gland and the pituitary gland and the effect of the hormones on the system, and he had mapped, he was beginning to find out ways and means, I am talking about many years ago, of how to map the movement of energies in deep meditation. About the pineal gland, which is a very, very small organ, which is shaped like a little green chili, not as big as a green chili, but shape, is somewhere in the mid-brain, very close to the limbic system that we have. All this I learnt from him. And it was considered for a long time to be a vestige organ which had no function for the human body, in the human body. Few years ago, they found out that it controls the sleeping rhythms and has secretes a hormone which produces sleep. When you go and when it is dark and you pull the curtains and switch off the light, when it becomes dark, the pineal gland releases a small amount, infinitesimally small amount of a certain hormone into the system. I forget the name of that hormone right now, which immediately produces sleep. Now they are selling tablets which contain this hormone, so that if you have a jet lag, if you have traveled for a long time, I think it is serotonin, I am not very sure, and when you come back from long distance, you have jet lag, you can't adjust to the time. So when you are awake, normally you should be awake, you would be sleepy, and when you are normally sleepy, you would be awake. Now if you eat a serotonin tablet, then your sleeping pattern is adjusted. I am not saying that you should, there are other ways and means of doing it, because dependence on drugs is not a good idea at all for the mind. All I am trying to say is that an organ which was considered a vestige organ is now found to be a very important organ which controls the sleeping pattern, the sleeping rhythm. Now, according to the neurologist, according to the German, he said it probably has other functions which he was trying to discover. He was experimenting on these. He was doing a lot of research. He was also doing a research on some of the older writers on neurology who believed that the human body, the human organism is wired for a spiritual experience. Whether you have it or not, depending upon various factors, it already has the faculties which make the brain capable of experiencing what is called a spiritual state. So he was also doing a lot of research on that. Later on, when I read Oliver Sacks and the famous neurologist Oliver Sacks of New York, who wrote a beautiful book called A Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. It's all about neurology and his different patients. When I read that, and later on when I met this friend of mine, Dr. Ramachandran, who wrote Phantoms in the Brain. He's a professor and a practicing neurologist in San Diego. I found out what the German was trying to say with a little more clarity. He said, so I said, but how did you meet Babaji? He said, that is a very interesting story. He said, I've come several times to Gomukh. And once when I arrived at Gomukh, and I was staying in a little kutir, wondering if I can find a genuine yogi somewhere who can guide me on this matter of the brain and neurology and kundalini and so on. He had a good knowledge of Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Sat Chakra Nirupana. He had also read Sir John Woodroff's Serpent Power. So he was theoretically well equipped. He said one day he saw a tall, fair gentleman with red, almost brown hair, matted and tied up on the top of the head, and wearing only a white piece of cloth, he said, in that cold of Gomukh, walking towards him. He was in a way surprised to see somebody like that, but beyond that, he said he was completely shocked when he came near him and said in German, Guten Tag, which means good morning, good day. So he also said Guten Tag, and then they sat down and Babaji said to him, I can't talk much when my German is not so good, so can we talk in English? So they talked together for a while, and then he found out that this was the person or the kind of person that he was seeking, who could actually, through personal experience, guide him towards these matters. So Babaji decided to spend a week with him, and at the end of the week he was also initiated into Kriya Yoga, the practice of Kriya Yoga, by which the Sushumna Nadi is cleaned and the energy is made to rise up to the Sahasrara Chakra. So this is the same Kriya Yoga about which Yogananda Paramahamsa writes about in the Autobiography of a Yogi. He was initiated into Kriya Yoga, and when I met him for 3 years, he had already been a Kriya Yoga practitioner and a Sri Vidya Upasaka, and Babaji had told me that he was quite an advanced sadhak and that I could learn quite a few things from him. So I stayed with him for some time and learned as much as I could. Then after that I went back to Rishikesh and met Babaji again and spent some more time wandering in Rishikesh, basing ourselves in the cave of Mauni Baba, in Mauni Baba's cave. Now, that was one of the most beautiful parts of my life, when I was convinced that this is going to be my life forever. I was going to walk on the banks of the Ganga as free as a bird, eat what food comes, not bother about an agenda. There was no agenda actually, except that I wanted to finally go to the essence of consciousness. There was no other external agenda, and not even a program, in the sense that Babaji's way of life was not to decide beforehand where one should go. One morning he would get up and say, now we will go to Uttarkashi, and we go to Uttarkashi. Then he said, now we are returning from Uttarkashi, you return from Uttarkashi. And there was no fixed blueprint. Everything was free, and fresh air, free for all, for which you don't have to pay, and so on. And I was enjoying this life and meditating deeply and blissfully living in this condition, thinking that this is going to be my cup of tea forever. When Babaji woke me up from that wonderful sleep one day by declaring that now, it was around 3.5 years I was with him. He said, whatever you have to study with me for this particular time has already been done. And now, I said, now what, Babaji, any more advanced studies? He said, no more advanced studies, you have to go back. I said, go back? He said, yes, you have to go back to the fields, go back to your parents, live normally like anybody else. Reached a beautiful state of mind. Babaji brought me back to reality. And he said, now you have to go back to your home, stay with your mother. Eventually, he said, you will get married, you will have a family. Stay normally, don't change your clothes. And he gave me a reason for this. He said, most of the people who will come to you are not sannyasins. People who come to you will be householders, married people, working people. And their problems can be sorted out only if you have lived a life and know what it actually means. He also said that renunciants and sannyasins should not give advice to married people on family matters, because they know nothing about it. It is only when you have a wife or you have a child, then you know the compulsions of living. So, go back and live normally. So I said, where should I go? He said, go back to Trivandrum. Now, as I have mentioned to you earlier, that time, at some point, Babaji had given me 2 copper rings to wear in my ears, so that the external paraphernalia of a Nathpanthi is to wear earrings. Sometimes they wear here in the cartilage, but he said, this is enough, you can wear. And also, I was not cutting my hair. The Nathpanth, nobody cuts their hair. It was quite long. In those days, I had a lot. My hair used to grow very, very fast. And I used to tie it up, keep it like Babaji, pretending that I am imitating him. So on. I had a Rudrakshamala. So when I was leaving, Babaji called me and said, are you going like this? I said, yes, Babaji. He said, no, already your mother and your parents are feeling sad because they didn't know where I was. For 3.5 years, they probably thought that I was dead. Afterwards, I came to know that they had advertised in newspapers, missing persons list. He said, in this condition, if you go and stand before them wearing rings and matted hair, that will be the last straw. Probably somebody will get a heart attack. So he told me, go and cut your hair, take out your earrings and throw them into the Ganga, and then you go to Delhi, gave me some money, buy a ticket from Haridwar to Delhi. The station, one of my senior disciples, Mr. Agarwal will come and receive you. He knows you are going, and he will take you home, and you stay with him for 2 days. From there, he will get you clothes to wear, decent clothes is the words he used, are the words he used, so that you wear a shirt and pants and then shoes and then go home. I said, all right, whatever you say. But I was said, but are you serious? Do you really think that I have to go back? He said, yes, you have to go back. There is no other way. And you know this is your mission. After you go back, you must spend some time with your parents, live a normal life, get some job. After some time, you can leave the job, go and join the Ramakrishna mission for some time. I want you to learn the discipline there, then and meet all holy men and spiritual people and yogis wherever possible. Study everything that is required, because you will find people from all walks of life coming to you in later years. When this happens, you should be well equipped to teach them according to the way that they go and not try to change their ways. And last, he said, at the end of all this exposure, you have to go and meet J. Krishnamurti, stay for some time and see how this works, how he works, what's happening. All this is part of your understanding. It should be part of your equipment. So you should be well equipped to handle all kinds of people who would at some point come to you. So I said, but Babaji, I don't want any people to come to me. I don't want to teach and get caught up in this. He said, look, it will happen at some point and I will give you the green signal for it. Only then you need to start. You don't have to start anything now, because if you open your mouth and say anything now, you will probably be talking rubbish. So I said, all right. So from there I went. Going back was so difficult from Babaji. One is leaving Babaji. Two is leaving the Himalayan beauties, the beautiful state where I used to live. And the third is going back into this thing about relatives and father and mother and sisters and friends and this whole, you know what it is. It's a net in which one is caught over and over again. About all that, I was not supposed to tell anybody or talk to anybody about all these things that I have learnt. I have to keep my mouth shut. Now that is a very difficult thing to do. When you go to a place where you see a holy man talking and you suddenly realize that sometimes this man is saying absolute nonsense and you can't open your mouth, you have to sit and listen. So that was a very difficult part of my life to do. Anyway, I went back. In Delhi, just as Babaji had said, Mr. Agarwal came and took me in his expensive car to his house in Kailash. He also gave me, as Babaji had instructed him, to give me the practice of Kriya, advanced practice of Kriya, which is called Talabhya, which is something to do with what in Hatha Yoga is called Khechari Mudra. It's slightly changed, it's called Talabhya in Kriya Yoga. So he taught me that, and then he sent for the tailor and I got a new pair of clothes. He bought me a sleeper ticket from Egmore to Trivandrum. I'm sorry, from Delhi to Egmore and Egmore to Trivandrum, and gave me also some money, and came to the station and dropped me and would goodbye. So one evening, I landed back in Trivandrum, clean shaved, wearing reasonable, respectable clothes. And then I was thinking how to go home. I found that the railway station area has not changed much in 3.5 years. So instead of hiring an auto or calling anybody, of course there were no cell phones then. So I thought I'll walk. It's not very far. So I walked with a small bag in my hand. And then I went to my house and entered the house, and my mother came out and she was shocked. She started crying and all that, and hugged me, and then my sisters. My father came afterwards in the evening. Anyway, nobody said anything. My dad was not angry with me. He only said, next time when you go somewhere, you tell us where you are going. Don't go off like that, because they thought that I was dead. So I spent some time in Trivandrum, and like Babaji said, I decided that I would use every opportunity that I get to learn something from yogis or holy men who are in and around the place. So that's when I went to Kanyakumari, as I said earlier, met Maima and got her blessings. I met Gopalaswami, of course, when I was a very small boy. I went to Abhedananda's ashram and spent some time because Swamiji was old and still there. He lived another year. And then something which is very extraordinary, which I have to tell you. Between Trivandrum and Kanyakumari comes the temple of Suchindram. It's a very famous Hanuman temple, Suchindram. Before you reach Suchindram, if you take a turn to the left, you will come to a place which is called Maruthuvamalai. It's an ancient mountain, Maruthuvamalai. On the top, there is no way to go up except through walking and trekking. On top of Maruthuvamalai, there are many caves, small caves. There is one cave. To go to that cave, you have to go through a tunnel and come out, and then you will find a cave. It's a small window, and if you look, you see the whole thing around, the complete scenery. The cave looks as if it was man-made, but I think it is a natural cave in which people came later and built some places where one can sit down and so on. So I decided to go to Maruthuvamalai. I wanted to be alone and spend the time by myself. So I got into a bus, got down and went to Maruthuvamalai. After that, I went several times with my friend Ranjit, who was my closest friend and who used to keep in touch with me even when I used to run away somewhere. Even after that, I have gone off here and there many times, short periods. So I went to Maruthuvamalai, climbed up the steps. By the time I reached there, it was evening. I had carried some food with me, simple food, bananas and few idlis packed. So I went up, and in the night I sat in one of those caves all alone. I was meditating. Suddenly I was woken up by somebody shouting, "Naina, Naina," like that. So I said, could be then. I opened my eyes and there was this man, very shriveled man, in wearing a small dhoti, very soiled dhoti. He had a moustache, but he had shaved small hair, very thin man. And he kept saying, "Naina, Naina, Naina." I actually didn't understand the meaning of Naina until I went and settled down in Madanapalli and learned a little bit of Tamil. Telugu. In Telugu, Naina means Appa, father. So apparently he always said Naina, Naina, and nobody knew what he was talking, because he used to talk in some words. In those days I did not know that it was Telugu. People there said he blabbers, but now I feel that it was Telugu. Anyway, he made me sit there. "Naina, Naina, kucho," something he said, and sat down. And that day he talked to me in Tamil, and when I came out and told people, they said it is impossible. He never talked Tamil, but he actually talked to me in such clear Tamil and gave me a good exposition of what is called Raj Yoga. It is a very interesting concept, because he said the difference between a Raj Yogi and an other yogi is that the other yogi starts practicing his attention from the bottom up. He said, in Raj Yoga we practice from top to bottom. I said, how is this possible? Because normally you start meditating from the Mooladhara center, which is at the lower part, and then go up to this center. He said, no. You see, he said it can be done, but it is very dangerous. I said, in what way dangerous? He said, if there is a well, and if there is water at the bottom of the well, and if you want to take the water from the bottom of the well, by going down into it and trying to take the water, there's every chance that you might slip and fall into the well. So what should we do? So he said, stay high up on the ground and use a bucket with a rope and take it up from below. So I said, how does it apply? He said, you concentrate on the higher centers from Ajna Chakra, from here to here. He said, there are 7 centers there also. So you put your attention there, and then from there you shift your attention down and pull up the energies one by one. Instead of trying to go up, pull it up from up above. Now this is a concept which I had never heard before. So I said, this Raj Yoga concept I have never heard before. What do you call it? He said, we call it Shiva Raj Yoga, and it is what was taught by Agastya to Tirumoolar. So this was a beautiful lesson I got from him. And then he also came and slept in that cave. But what I noticed, something very peculiar was, normally we sleep with our legs straight and body down. He sat down, stretched his legs, bent his head in front, and did something like what in yoga is called Paschimottanasana, which means resting the forehead on the knees and holding it tight. He fell asleep. In that position, I have never seen anybody sleeping like that in my life. He said, this is how yogis should sleep, they should not lie down. Okay, I never attempted because I like to lie down and sleep, but anyway. So the next day morning, I got down from Maruthuvamalai and went back. After that, several times with my friend Ranjit, with my friend Madana Gopal, with a motorbike, we used to go all the way to Maruthuvamalai, sometimes go further up to Kanyakumari. But after that, only once I met him, once in my life. And that was when I went with Madana Gopal one day. We went up to the cave. I left my chappals there and went inside, and my friend was sitting inside. When he went and picked up those chappals, brought them and put them in front of my friend Madana and said, Namaskaram, Namaskaram. So he wondered what he was saying. He said, bow down to those chappals. So afterwards my friend told me, I think he wants me to accept you as my guru. I said, that is left to you, whether you want guru or no guru, but if you want to do it. That was the second time I met. After that I heard that he had passed away. Then I went to a place called Takkalai, which is also very close to Kanyakumari. It's on the way to Nagarkoil, where there is the tomb of a holy man, a Sufi holy man, whose name is Takkalai Peer Muhammad Sahib. It's a tomb. It is said that he was a blind man who used to live there, and he was a weaver who used to weave clothes, and he had a small boy to help him. He would put his hand on his shoulders and walk around. The boy was his eyes, and he lived his life. His tomb is there even now, and in some way in our family, one of our ancestors was his close disciple, so his tomb is also there. So one day I went there because I had heard about Takkalai Peer Muhammad Sahib. My grandmother used to tell me stories about him. So I went to the tomb. It's a very peaceful place. Meditated for some time and got into a conversation with the man who was looking after the tomb. So I told him, please tell me something about him. So he said that he lived here for many years. He was blind and he used to meditate for a long, long period of time. Even in the dead of the night, people never saw him sleep. He would be sitting and doing his prayers or sitting quietly and meditating. Then he told me a very interesting story. It seems one day 3 Arabs who were experts in the Quran, the Islamic scripture, they came to Takkalai hearing that there was a saint called Peer Muhammad Sahib. But they were told that this man need not do his 5 times prayers. He was never went to the mosque, but he would simply sit quietly and meditate. Although sometimes he said Allah, Allah, but he never went to the mosque. And that he had never gone to Makkah to Hajj, which every Muslim is supposed to do in his lifetime. So they came actually to make him understand that this is not the way. You should do 5 times prayer every day, and that you should go to Makkah, and if you need help we will give you money and so on. So they came and they met him, and they told him that you have not gone to Makkah. It is incumbent on all Muslims to go to Makkah, so if you don't have money, we are there to help you. So he made them sit for some time, and then he's supposed to have, you know, that he used to have a pot, water pot kept inside near his weaving machine, hand weaving. So there was a water pot. So I believe he told them, after doing your prayers, please come here and look into the pot. So after doing their prayers, they came and looked, all 3 of them looked into the pot with a white cloth thrown on top of the head. And when they looked, suddenly the water cleared and they saw a scene. They saw inside the water pot, on the water, they saw Makkah. And there they saw a lot of pilgrims going round and round the Kaaba. And along with that, they saw themselves also going round. And in front, the Pir Muhammad Sahib was also going, led by this small boy with his hands on his shoulders, going round and coming out. So when they saw this, they were so astounded and embarrassed that they had asked this holy man to improve himself when they themselves didn't know about him, that they begged pardon of him and said, we didn't know that you are such a great saint. We are very sorry about it, and went back to wherever they came from. This is one of the stories of Takalapi. So I went there, and then I also used to visit all the little temples, mosques, tombs, wherever I could find them. I went one day, traveled to Tiruchi and went to Srirangam and had a darshan of Ranganatha there, who is lying in the sleeping posture in Anantasayana. And then from there I went to Nagur, where there is a mosque, a tomb of a great saint, Sufi saint, who is referred to as Nagur Andavar. Very close to that is the Velankanni shrine, where hundreds and thousands of people go every day. So I went to the Velankanni church also, spent some time quietly. You know, the thing about a church is that first of all, as soon as you enter, especially old churches, when I travel in Europe, I make it a point to go to these old cathedrals. They are so peaceful and beautiful inside. First, because nobody utters a word, everybody is silent, and there is a beautiful altar. And if you are lucky, there are these huge organs which play devotional music. Nobody is singing, only the music. This organ music is so peaceful to the soul that you enjoy it sitting there on the benches which are kept there. I love to go to these cathedrals, old cathedrals. Of course, in many parts of Europe, nobody is attending service now. So many of these cathedrals, some of them have been turned into supermarkets now or into tourist attractions, but they are out of this world. So since I used to go to the Palayam church also in Trivandrum, I went to Velankanni church, spent some time there, meditated, because I believe that a person like Jesus Christ cannot be an ordinary human being. It is not possible. Which ordinary human being would say, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you? Which ordinary human being would say that? Here, if somebody turns one ear, you are ready to kick him in the stomach. How can you forgive somebody? Not only forgive, do good to them that hate you. I mean, this is extraordinary. I think it is not an ordinary man. It's something you cannot define. I think if Jesus Christ was born in India, he would have been one of, now we have Dashavataras, they would have had 11th avatar also put up, because it's not like a human being. So this is the thing. Of course, in the name of religion, battles have been fought, people have been killed. This is because of established religion. It is nothing to do with the true essence of religion. No great teacher has asked or encouraged people to engage in this kind of thing. It's that when it becomes established, all these things happen, and it is organizational. One of my person whom I respect very much, J. Krishnamurti, had a story about this. He used to say that once the devil, you know what a devil is? Satan. Devil and his close friend went for a walk. So as they were walking, the devil bent down and picked up something and put it in his pocket. So his friend asked him, "What have you just picked up?" The devil said, "I have just picked up the truth, Satya, Dharma, and so on, the truth." So his friend said, "You have picked up the truth and put in your pocket. Then your days are numbered, you are finished, because you are the opposite of truth. You are supposed to be untruth, you are supposed to be darkness, you are supposed to be cruelty. So if you have picked up the truth and put in your pocket, then your days have ended now, you will be destroyed." And the devil smiled and put his hand on his friend's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, friend, I will organize it." Which means truth also, if it is too organized and structured, it can become the untruth, and it can. This is what has happened. No founders of religions, no great beings have ever put man against man. It's the organizations that create all these problems. If you look, you will find that every one of these great beings, this is my personal experience, have been spiritual, caused no harm to others, and never wanted anyone to cause harm to anybody else. Of course, there are different ways to the truth. As Babaji used to say, if you have to reach a pond to drink water, you can reach it through different paths. Now, these are all different approaches to the same truth. You cannot say that that path is wrong and this path is right. There are different ways, and it suits different people to follow different paths. We cannot say this is only right path to go. There are different ways. There is a story of how 4 people belonging to 4 different categories were feeling thirsty. They wanted to drink water. One of them, who was a Greek, said that he wanted to drink aqua. Another one said that he wanted to drink water. A third one said he wanted to drink jala, which is again water, jalam. The fourth one said tanni. But actually they were all trying to drink the same water. A big fight broke up between which is good for thirst, tanni or aqua or water or jala, not knowing that thirst is to be appeased by drinking the same water. No